And a quick word too about audio. If you're having audio problems, you might find it helpful to switch audio modes. People with slower internet connections usually find it better to call in on the phone number. So thanks again for joining us today. Donor retention seems to be the mantra of 2013, and I'm so excited to be working with Adrian Sargent, Lisa Sargent, no relation, Simone Joyeux, Jonathan Grapsis, and our friends at the Agitator, Tom and Roger, for the upcoming donor retention project. And it's actually through Tom and Roger that I first heard about Bloomerang, and I have been hearing so much about it. I'm so excited about it. And I'm actually going to be learning quite a bit myself today. I'm excited to introduce you to Jay Love. He is the founder and CEO of eTapestry and now Bloomerang. Jay is going to be talking about the importance of retention and building lifetime donors. And he's going to be giving us an overview of Bloomerang. Thanks for being here today, Jay.
Thank you very much, Pam. It's so exciting to have such a nice crowd here today.
Yeah, we're up to, we've got 56 people in the room. We've got capacity for 100. I am going to turn the controls over to you. Let me see. There you are. Did you get that?
Yes, I did. And is everybody seeing my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. And let me
Great. That's terrific.
hide the control panel. So good. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for sharing part of your morning or the early part of the afternoon, depending on the time zone that you're on. As Pam stated there, we're going to be providing an overview of Bloomerang, and Bloomerang is really based upon a sort of a different concept. It's a donor database, it's a CRM, it's several items rolled into one, but the main premise of the product and what it brings to the small and medium-sized nonprofit is best practices. We've worked with Dr. Adrian Sargent, who's our chief scientist, as well as many of the other people that Pam was just mentioning, to talk about focusing the system on best practices. And you're going to see those sort of come to life. In fact, it might be sort of surprising to many of you that I'm not going to really be showing that many shots of the screens and et cetera within the program, and we can of course do that for you at any point in time later. But I wanted to give you some background of what led us into this. And as Pam mentioned, donor retention has become sort of the mantra of 2013, and part of it is that the current rates are not really going in the right direction. And there's certain things that every fundraiser, whether you're at a small or medium-sized shop, can do to reverse that trend. And let's see if we can get to the next slide here. So when we talk about retention, it's really about active donor commitment, and that's helping them feel the passion and have an enduring passion for your nonprofit. And inspiring donors is such a key to that loyalty and to affect that retention rate. And that's just taken, those are a couple comments from 101 fundraising that I always try to use as a prelude to any of my sessions to talk about that. As we look at the agenda for the day, we'll talk about why the case for building and improving donor retention, talking about addressing the attrition problem and talking about how loyalty comes into the mixture, how this can be done and what are some of the retention drivers and how you can do that. And then we'll sort of wrap it up talking about how you can improve so much of this via donor engagement and in different ways that we can actually measure that donor engagement so you can see how you're doing in your particular situation. So one of the key aspects that excited me when I first started reading the research from Dr. Sargent and his research that he's done with the Center for Philanthropy and several of the larger national nonprofits is that a 10% increase, I'm going to ask this as a rhetorical question rather than an actual question since we're going to save the questions till the end, but what does a 10% increase in donor retention mean in terms of lifetime dollars raised? So if we take a look at everybody's database, and if your retention rate right now is, let's say, 55%, and could you move that, if you move that to 65%, what does that mean in the total dollars that will come in from that group of donors and supporters over the course of their lifetime supporting you? And I always ask when I do my face-to-face sessions, is it a 50%, is it a 100%, or is it a 150 to 200% increase? And believe it or not, if you can change the retention rate by as little as 10%, you can change the overall amount of dollars that come in the lifetime of your database by 150 to 200%. And so I hope, as it says right there, that we have your attention so far on this, because it can make a significant difference in supporting your mission. This particular slide scares so many board members because most people don't really realize what attrition means to a database of a sample here. And I know Pam works with a lot of smaller shops, but let's just use an example here of 1,000 names in your database that are supporters. If you have 1,000 active donors, if your attrition rate in the top line there is 20%, you can sort of see how many donors you would have at the end of 5 years. It drops down to 328. But if it moves up to as much as 60% there, you can see those 1,000 donors over the course of 5 years dwindle down to just 10 active supporters for your organization. And it's what causes so many organizations to be what I refer to as this fundraising treadmill, where you're always trying to bring in more new donors every year to replace these, and it becomes such a life cycle of doing it over and over and over. And unfortunately, you can't really upgrade a brand new donor. If someone's coming in and going off, it doesn't give you the opportunity to move them on up into larger and larger giving levels. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So let's talk about where I get some of my data. I had the good fortune of working very closely with both the Association of Fundraising Professionals and the Urban Institute in Washington, D.C. on creating what's called the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. And this project is the first time ever in our sector where we took data directly from donor databases. This was based upon data out of nearly 3,200 donor databases, and I'll show you what products those came from in just a minute. And the most recent one is based upon the results coming in from 2011. These particular databases produced over $2 billion with a B in donations during that time frame where the measurements are being taken. The participating donor software firms are the ones you see there: Donor2, Donor Perfect, the Razor's Edge, eTapestry, etc. Those folks provided in a summary format actual data coming from their databases based upon the permission of the customers to create the results here. And based upon the data that came from these particular items, the donor retention rate in the most recent published results was just 41%. So if the retention rate is 41%, the attrition rate is 59%. And sadly enough, and as shocking as you can see by the little shocking face there, is this has been the report has been coming out for 5 years, and it's dropped down by 10% over that 5-year period. It's really dropped by about 2% a year during the time period that we've been keeping track of that. And so your eyes did read correctly. For all those organizations, the average was nearly 6 out of every 10 donors from the previous year did not donate at all in the next year. And that's sort of hard to get over, because you think about 6 out of 10 donors, that could range from first-year donors to multi-year donors, but that's a lot of dollars sort of flying out the window during those time periods. So when we talk about addressing the attrition problem, what we really want to talk about is it a donor loyalty problem? Are people fully aware of why they supported your organization, and are you helping them to realize how important it is to stay in touch with you and to be a supporter beyond the first year or beyond the second or third year if they're a multi-year donor for that? And those donor loyalty problems, I'm going to compare that to a little bit what happens in the commercial sector and why customers leave a retail establishment or a direct mail firm or anybody else that they might be using. So the expert I've been talking about is Dr. Adrian Sargent. He's our chief scientist here at Bloomerang and is one of the top 10 most influential people in fundraising. I would strongly encourage you, if you would ever want to dig deeper, to take a look at any of his publications. He's got a book called Building Donor Loyalty that's sort of the Bible of this particular key area. He also has a smaller publication called Tiny Essentials of Donor Loyalty, which is something it's about a 40-page book that's about 2 or 3 hour read that I think you would find to be very informative also. But we have adapted many of Dr. Sargent's key research philosophies and ideas that he's been lecturing about for years and years, and have made them part of our Bloomerang software package. Now, the first thing we want to take a look at is defining lifetime value. I talked about it influencing what the lifetime value would be for somebody, but to truly define it, it's the total net contribution that a donor generates during his or her lifetime in your database. And so each organization will have a different lifetime value based upon the average donation and the average lifespan of somebody in your database. And many organizations that we work with have taken a look at their lifetime value and compared that. One of the key aspects that the Bloomerang product brings to market is that you can opt in if you're one of our customers and be able to compare your lifetime value to our customer base as a whole. And then a little bit later on, we'll be breaking it down by region and by vertical. So if you are, for instance, a food bank, you would be able to see what other food banks are. Or if you're another type of nonprofit, one nature or another, you would be able to get direct comparisons and see how your lifetime value and your retention rates compare to other organizations in your same geographical area or in your same vertical. So key factors in donor loyalty improvement. Well, one of the first things that we try to take a look at is how much is being spent in cost versus the donation revenues. That treadmill that I was referring to a little bit earlier, where you're trying to obtain as many new donors as possible each year, often results that you get a little bit upside down. You have more than $1 spent for $1 coming in some cases. So that's hence the need to really take a closer look at building loyalty, where you can have a much greater return on your fundraising dollars. Your average lifetime, as I was referring to a little bit earlier, is your average lifetime in your database a couple years, or is it 5 or 10 years? The most we've ever seen is somebody in about a 15-year period is the average lifespan in their donor database. And then, of course, your retention rates. These are all factors we can take a look at. And one of the first things we do when someone is using the Bloomerang database, when you first come into the software, this is an actual screenshot of the dashboard that you come into. And as you'll see on this dashboard, the donor retention rate is right there. And that's your current retention rate at the moment you log in. We are continuously updating that based upon the retention rate of your actual donors in your database. And it allows you to see and compare as you log in at different times to do that. I might also point out that the icons that you see on the left, those are all the icons that are necessary in order to use the day-to-day functions of the Bloomerang software product. It's an online web-based product, so you can come in with any web browser, and by just clicking on any one of these icons, as you'll see a little bit later, it opens up the section of the program that you're going to work with, so you don't have to worry about rows of tabs and other things that come into play for doing that. In fact, one of the key things that we have found so far, we've been implementing all of our beta customers over the last 3 months, and virtually all of those customers just started using the product without any formal training, and that's sort of unique after all of our years of having to have people go through days and days of training in order to use a fundraising software program. The next area is the best use of your staff time, and I always equate that to the value segments of your donor database. And we find that if people are always trying to bring in new donors, they tend to be working in just those bottom two sections there, the 25 and under donors and the $25 to $100 donors, because that's where a lot of people tend to come in with their first gift. And I know Pamela would probably be able to add a lot more to this, but one of our goals is to make sure that you're spending as much time as possible in those top 3 sections of the pyramid. And what we find is the longer someone stays in your database and is retained in your database, the much greater chance you have of moving them up to those higher levels of the value proposition there, and hopefully get many of them that are in that $1,000 and above area, which can make up for a lot of individuals down in that bottom tier of the pyramid. Another area is using retention and reactivation practices, and that's where the Bloomerang software comes into play again, you'll notice right there beside the retention dial, you will see suggestions for improvement. And what we've done is we've recorded all of the different suggestions that Dr. Sargent has in his day-to-day working with hundreds and hundreds of nonprofits. And based upon what's happening in your database, the suggestions for improvement will come up accordingly. And that will be chosen from a wide variety of those to come up there. You can also see on this screen, it shows you interesting dashboards of donations for different time periods and the status of any of your campaigns, so you have those right at your fingertips as you come in. And then, of course, we think that finding a database that helps rather than hinders with loyalty can make a huge difference, because the little suggestions and hints and the processes that we build in all follow along the guidelines for improving loyalty, thereby affecting the retention rates. Now, for those of you that have not heard of Bloomerang, this is a picture of our website. It's www.bloomerang.co. And for any of you that would like to have more detailed product information or would like to actually see a demonstration of the product, you can register for that right at the website. So I would encourage you, after we finish our session here, if you're interested in taking a closer look at it, go ahead and sign up there, and we'll be glad to take you into whatever level of detail you would like to see. But when we talk about retention drivers, this is what an actual look at a donor in our database looks like. This is a gentleman by the name of Rod Signorelli, actually an employee of Bloomerang, and this is a summary of his giving. And you can see here that he became a donor in 2009, and this is where his donations are. And you can see the lifetime total, the average, the first, largest, and latest donation. Those are all automatically populated. But what I want to draw your attention to is this engagement rank over on the right-hand side of the screen. That little sort of gas gauge or bar that you see there will move up and down based upon what you're doing on a day-to-day basis in your daily use of the database, so that the engagement ranking can now become a key reporting criteria, and it also becomes very apparent anytime you're in contact with that individual. So whether you're sending something out via email or direct mail, or you have a face-to-face meeting or a phone call, you can see what that engagement rank is, and then right below that, it's showing you what factors have happened in the most recent time period to affect that engagement rank. So let me just walk you through some of the retention factors and whether this would move them up or down. And these are things that happen as part of your day-to-day working with the Bloomerang database. The first one you see on the screen there, they made a donation in the last 12 months. Of course, if that's the case, that moves the needle up. If they make more than one donation, if they make multiple donations, each donation that comes in a 12-month period also moves their engagement ranking up. If they have a recurring donation or a pledge, we give them a higher engagement value. If they've done a full year or more of recurring giving, we move that up. That's one of the most important loyalty factors, is whether or not someone has set up to become a recurring giver to your organization. If they give in multiple channels, what I'm talking about there, if they perhaps attended a special event and register for the event online, maybe they also do something through direct mail, maybe they also do something by face-to-face contact. Anytime someone is working with you in multiple channels, we also move the retention rank up. Obviously, if they upgrade in their giving level, that moves it up. If they downgrade or they lapse, that moves the needle back quite a bit for that. So those are some of the transaction-oriented retention factors. Let's talk about some of the other retention factors. If they attend one or more of your events, we move it up. Then we get into the social media, and this is all of a sudden where we can find out how engaged somebody is for that. So if they make a posting or if they like you on your Facebook wall, we give them engagement ranking credit for that. If they post something about your nonprofit on their Facebook wall that ties back to you, we do that. If they are using Twitter and they do a tweet, that moves it up. If they reply to a tweet or mention your nonprofit again, we move the engagement level up. And then some others that are very important. We have found if someone has their phone number on file with you, they're much more likely to be a loyal donor over time. If they've stated their communication preferences, if someone has taken the time to let you know how they would like to be communicated with, the chances of them donating in later time periods is much, much higher. And if they've indicated their areas of special interest, particularly what areas they find of your mission that they would like to particularly fund, if you've got that information in the database and if you've marked that down, we move the engagement level up for that too. The last one are sort of the communication factors. These are some additional ones. If they open any email that you send to them, we assume that their engagement level is higher. If they click on links in the email or in your newsletter, then we move the engagement factor up. If they opt out of any of your emails, we move them back down. If they have supplied information about their email addresses and their preferences, we also do that. We're moving it up. If they, one of the biggest factors, if their email address has changed or their phone number has changed and they let you know, we find out that that's a very strong indication of loyalty. In fact, if anybody ever contacts you and tells you that their phone number has changed or their address has changed, they are very, very likely to be a legacy giver down the road. They have a much higher propensity for that, so keep that in mind. If they've responded to a survey, if they volunteer, or if they've indicated that they've left a bequest or a legacy gift of some nature, those of course all move them up. So as you can imagine, as you do your day-to-day work, that engagement category here that you see my arrow pointing to is moving up and down based upon those factors occurring every day, week, month, etc. So all of a sudden now you can use engagement ranking as a key criteria as you're designing any of your future communications. Now, let's talk a little bit why people leave. This is a study that was done by the Rockefeller Foundation a few years ago of why customers leave. And I thought this always brings to mind a few thoughts and allows people to compare why customers leave a retail establishment versus why donors leave. 1% left because they passed away. Relocation to a different area was 3% of the reason why customers leave. Won by a competitor, 5%. Bad complaint handling was 14% of why people leave retail establishments. And lack of interest was 77%. And I find that almost scary that that's the case, but I truly find that to be myself. I've been going to the same little neighborhood dry cleaner for probably 8 years, and to this day, I've never had the person call me by name or even ask me about my name. And it would be very easy and very little switching cost for me to switch to a different dry cleaner at any point in the future, because I don't feel like there's any sort of a relationship or that person has gone out to win my business, even though I'm in there once or twice a week. Now let's compare that to the key reasons for donors leaving, and I'll sort of put those in order of relevance. No longer able to afford support, no memory of ever supporting the organization, which I think is sort of sad, sort of points back to communication practices in many cases. The organization has asked for inappropriate sums, feeling that other causes are more deserving. The next highest one was not reminded to give again, once again pointing back to appropriate communication practices. A big one here, the organization did not inform me how monies were used. One of the first things that Bloomerang does is, if you are sending out a thank you letter, it will prompt you to ask, are you letting the donor know what the monies are being used for? And in your future communication, are we reminding them, if this person is a previous donor, what their monies went for and how those monies were being used? And then the highest level one is that they did not feel connected to your organization. And there's just so many ways we can affect that. So let's talk about, based upon Dr. Sargent's research, what are some of the retention drivers? Well, the first one, and one of the most important ones, is to provide mission performance data. How is your organization doing on performing your mission? And that should be part of every communication. And if I looked at each of your websites right now, could I quickly tell exactly what your mission is and how your organization is doing from year to year in achieving that mission? Next would be building a relationship, especially on those donors that are above your average gift level. And one of the things that the Bloomerang system will do is anytime you're dealing with somebody that their last donation or their average donation is above your database average, it's going to ask you, can you be more personal in your responses to them in your communication? And I always think myself of relating it to how a good friendship develops over time. If you can make it happen in that same manner, you can have this be the case too. And what I'm looking at right now is one of my favorite screenshots of the Bloomerang product. When I'm looking at a particular person's record, this is our version of timeline. All of you that are out there that are Facebook users, you know what Facebook timeline looks like. This is our timeline, and it's a timeline of this relationship being built with that person. So you can see what's happened in 2012, 2011, 2010. The left-hand side over here is each contact that I've had with the person, each communication, every note, every financial transaction. And by the little filters over here, I can turn those off or on so I can see that. But we've been often asked by people, particularly those people that are meeting directly with donors, can I have some sort of a screenshot or a quick report that lets me see the entire relationship with that person? Now, on the right-hand side that we see is in the manila boxes here are what we call the highlights. These are the actions that have moved the engagement level or the engagement needle each year. So any one donor may have one or two of those, or they may have 9 or 10 of those, but those will always be shown there, and those are updated in real time. As you send out a mailing, as you send out emails, as you make post transactions in the database, this will continually update the highlights and go back and change that needle for every effective record in the database for you. And we've really found that this allows people to focus in on those key important elements that affect loyalty and therefore it's affected the retention rate. Another key area is providing numerous touch points, and what we're talking about is a multifaceted communication strategy here. And in the case of working with Bloomerang, is bringing in some of the social media interactions so that you can see that. People that are interacting with you with social media are usually very, very engaged individuals, and should be folks that can be targeted for getting involved on a financial standpoint or moving up to a higher level. So we see here from Melissa's record down at the bottom all of the pertinent social media accounts, or Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and etc. And once we have her identifying name in there and the link established, all of that social media interactions are fed right into the Bloomerang database, so you don't have to worry about trying to monitor it yourself. It will let you know, and if things are happening there, it's posting them into the timeline, and it's also moving the engagement needle up for them. And as we said, always communicating what the monies are doing. And what we're looking at now is the communication screen within Bloomerang, and this is where you set up to send out any sort of a one-off email or multiple group emails. And part of the process is we build into the email templates that are there suggestions for how you can let your donors and prospective donors know what's happening with the funding of your mission and where their monies are going. So you can actually bring, if that is part of what was recorded with each financial transaction, it will give you a chance to report back on that with every communication that you're making with that individual. So it really makes it quite easy to make that come to life. So I'm going to try to leave time here so that we've got plenty of time for questions to come out here. In conclusion, if you're striving for donor satisfaction, keep in mind that that can be based upon donor commitment and donor engagement, which can be easily measured if you're working with the right tools to make that come to life. When you talk about commitment and engagement, that is usually the result of donor trust that's been built over time with your communications that you're seeing happening for that. And if the donor trust is right, the donor loyalty comes into being for you, and that really is the biggest single factor, that trust and that loyalty, to affecting those retention rates over time. So if you're out there on the phone right now, I want you to just, if you could, just close your eyes for just a second. And what I'd like for you to do is close your eyes and imagine what you could do for the mission of your organization if you doubled the lifetime value of your donor database. Think about what monies you raised in the last 3 years, and think about what would happen if over the next 5 or 6 years those amounts were doubling based upon moving that retention rate up. And I've often found when people think about that and they have their boards and their executive committees think about that, the impact is so tremendous upon the mission that it helps them take that step into doing something about that. So what I'd like to do, Pam, if it's okay, is open it up for questions about what we've covered here and any questions at all that people might have about the Bloomerang product.
Thanks, Jay. That was really awesome. That was fascinating. I was especially struck by the social media.
Well, being a bit of a social media guru like you are, I knew that would be a point that you would like to see there.
Can I ask you a couple quick questions that just came to mind first, and then we've actually got a number of questions.
Wonderful.
When you were going over the different engagement factors,
Yes.
can you set engagement factors that are specific to your organization as well?
Right now we have not made that available to people. Honestly, there are in the system right now about 45 engagement factors. I showed you a good portion of them there for it. We plan on down the road to let people put custom ones in there, and also to put the weighting on there. Right now, it's sort of like the Coca-Cola or the Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe. We've got Dr. Sargent's weighting saying how much an upgrade means versus a tweet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a clue. The upgrade counts a lot more in the but we sort of got the secret recipe, and we're going to go with that for the first year and see how that plays out, because we think the ability for organizations to compare themselves to other folks using the product will be very powerful, and we're not sure if that gets customized, whether those comparisons will be as much apple to apple as we want them to be.
Gotcha. My other question that came to mind, because I saw one of my subscribers was in on the webinar, is Bloomerang good for all organizations? What about, say, membership organizations? What about museums?
At the present time, it's set up that if you've got a separate ticketing program or something of that nature, that we can integrate to with our what we call application programming interfaces. They're called APIs. If we can integrate to systems that you have that are there, then it's a possible good fit. But the Bloomerang product does not have a ticketing function right now, and it does not have a membership billing function. So depending on whether or not those are systems you've already got in play and you just want to use this for your major gifts and fundraising activities and keep the membership over on the other side, it's a possible fit. If not, if you're looking for an all-in-one system, that will probably be a few years down the road with the Bloomerang product.
Gotcha. This question came in from Mark. He asks, can the program differentiate between a general donor and a donor to a specific campaign, for example, a year-end campaign? Will the retention rate be for our year-end campaign and past years, or will it be for all donations?
The reporting allows you that the retention dial that you see is for every donor in the database when you first log in every time, but you have other reports that you can run retention rates for certain campaigns, certain geographical areas. Maybe you want the retention rate for your board. It allows you to run that same dial-like report on subsegments based upon what we call queries or filters in the system. Good question.
Oh, interesting. This question came in from Norman. He writes in, is engagement focus based on what the nonprofit is doing with a supporter, or their interactions with the nonprofit, or both?
Well, we're actually, as you could tell there, talking about what the nonprofit is doing and the way of communicating to the supporter. and also the supporters' actions coming back. I tend to think that the higher level engagements are the, both parties are interacting, but it does track interactions on one side or another by themselves too. If you would like to see that, as you can tell by some of the retention factors that you were placing there.
Excellent. This is a good question from Travis. He asks, what email service providers do you integrate with?
As long as an email service provider has the integration points, we can work with any of them. But most of the people out there on the webinar would be glad to know the email engine that's built into Bloomerang is built upon Amazon Web Services. And for the average nonprofit, unless you're really doing some very sophisticated things where your emails tie back into landing pages on your website, the email engine that is built right in and is part of the pricing of Bloomerang will usually allow people to no longer have to keep a separate email provider like Constant Contact or Exact Target or programs like that. The email engine there allows you to use those same templates and to do many, if not all, of the same functions, and it's part of the Bloomerang pricing, so you don't have to have two separate fees come into play.
Oh, that's crazy. That's fabulous. So then there's just the integration is incredible. Let me see. I've got more questions.
Well, one thing while you're picking the next question there, one of the things that I found over the years with working with all of my FundMaster customers and then all of my eTapestry customers and then some of the Blackbaud customers when we became part of Blackbaud is that so many times people look at these fundraising software programs and when they're purchasing them, they try to buy something that has the most features or most functions. And then a year or two later, they sadly come to the conclusion that they're only using 10% of what the product does. And in fact, the saddest thing that we found as we did surveys year after year, that the position for the person running the database tends to have the highest turnover in most nonprofits. It tends to be a little bit of a lower paying position in some cases, and so therefore it turns over quite often. And sometimes the more features and functions that you have, the more difficult it is to keep using them in the proper manner going forward. And someone coming in using it in a different manner actually causes more harm than it does good for that. And we find that every day. In any particular week, we are in the process of converting 20 or 30 databases over into Bloomerang.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest part of the conversion process is helping people that have had multiple folks using their previous database change all of the incorrect entries back so they're consistent. One person codes something this way, the next person codes it another way, and do that. And one of the real benefits of data conversion is getting everything aligned so that all of a sudden the reports and the queries and the filters all work properly and give you the data that you'd like to see.
Oh, amen. I've been there and done that.
Yeah,
We've
well,
actually.
I always urge people now, think about what you do. If the old Pareto principle is never truer, think about what you're going to do day to day, 80 to 90% of the time, and find the program that does that 80 to 90% the fastest, the easiest, and the best for you, because that's what's going to make you the happiest 5 years from now.
That's true. Lindsay asks how many users? We are a virtual organization. Is this cloud-based? I think you said it was. We have a small
Yes,
staff of 4. Can everyone put in notes?
absolutely. Now, there's no limit on the users. One of the pricing parameters for Bloomerang is based upon unlimited users and virtually unlimited emails for you to do that. The only thing that moves you from one level to the next is the number of names or the number of accounts in your database, and that's just due to the storage cost for it. But you have unlimited users, and we hope that maybe this is simple enough that we start seeing executive directors using the database, because if the executive director of your small to medium-sized nonprofit is one of your key fundraisers, I always think it's really sad that the notes and the comments that they have in their conversations are not making it into the database, because
Oh, I so agree.
it's so powerful. If the executive director just had lunch with somebody, I hope that they can go out to their car and pop open their laptop, their tablet, or even their smartphone and put in the notes really easily so everybody can see them on the timeline.
Oh, excellent. Jessica writes, what type of staff training is available for this product in addition to phone support?
Okay, good. Yeah, there's unlimited phone support. The staff training, I think you'll all find this to be magical, is just a series of 3 to 5 minute videos. So those icons that you saw on the left-hand side there, there's a 3 to 5 minute video for each one explaining the use of that, and we have a video for the setup, and then we have another shorter video for the day-to-day usage of that. So right now, most people find that they're up and using the product by just anytime they get ready to use that section, they watch a 3 or 4 minute video, and then they start using that particular portion of the product. So there's no formal training beyond those short videos.
Deborah writes, can contacts be imported from Excel or similar platforms?
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, there is a very straightforward template to bring anything in from a spreadsheet file directly into Bloomerang for that. So we make that available that you can do it yourself, or we would be glad to do it for just a small fee and bringing those in. What we usually find is most people have the information in more than one Excel file or more than one spreadsheet file. So it's usually not only bringing it in from the file, but combining and deduping and cleaning it up a little bit. So that's where our team sort of are masters at doing that. They're very good at using various utilities to make sure that you don't have the same person in there twice, or if the person is part of a household, getting all those members of the household or the members of the same foundation or the same company all linked together properly so you can communicate with them individually or as one.
Excellent. Merritt asks, how do the social media website interactions initiated by the donor get into Bloomerang?
Uh, all you have to do is in their individual record, as long as you've got a link between the two there. So if they've done a like of your Facebook page and you know what their Facebook address is, then that link has been established, and that's how that feeds into there. If you want to know a little bit more formal, I don't want to bore people with the technical details, but my email address should still be on the screen there, Pam. And
Oh, it
if you
is.
yeah, if you would like to shoot me an email, I could have a member of the technical team actually explain exactly how that takes place. But basically, if someone has connected with you and you know their Twitter address or their Facebook address, and they've established that they're connected with you, then that information is coming through automatically.
That is so cool.
Yeah, right now and just to let everybody know, we're working with Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We plan to add some others a little bit down the road, but those are the three that we take feeds from right now.
That is so cool. Jeanette, I'm just going to give you a couple more quick questions because I think everybody's anxious to get going here. But Jeanette writes, can you customize reports like year-end tax receipts? What do you use to customize reports?
Okay. The system has a fairly easy to use report writer that allows you to do much of the customization. It also allows any report to be dropped right into Excel, or if you're using the Google document products, it drops it right into the Google versions of Excel and Word to that. And once you're there, you can make modifications there. Most people we find are much more comfortable modifying something if it's been dropped into a native Word or Excel format. So it allows you to do that for any report coming out of the system.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. David asks, how is the data secured?
We are using on the Amazon Web Services, we use both the major East Coast and West Coast data centers for Amazon, and it's the same ones used for all the Amazon processing. So if you've ever purchased a product via Amazon, we're using the same hosting centers for that, and so everything is secured there. Your individual database is set up so that there are IDs and passwords for everybody that's coming into the system so that nobody has access to your database.
Okay, we've got a couple people asking about the costs. Is
Okay.
your pricing affordable? What's the cost?
Okay, good. Well, basically, it starts at $99 per month for that. And if you go to the latter part of my email address, the www.bloomerang.co, the pricing's right on the first page there. You just scroll down, and it's got the pricing, and it tells you how many emails you get and et cetera for that. And we're also just finishing up our beta user period. That's actually going to go until the into the month of February for a few weeks. And the nice thing about it, anybody that you're out that's listening right now, if you would happen to be interested, we are offering the first 3 months free of charge for people to try the product and see what they think. So if you want to do that and take a look at it, just register on our website, and have someone get in touch with you and see if we need to convert any of your data. But you're welcome to use the product for the first 3 months on us and see what you think about it.
Wow.
Yeah,
You can't,
that's
that's
why
that's excellent.
we're doing a lot of data conversions right now, because the ability for people to make that come to life and see, because so many folks are sort of concerned about how complex these systems have gotten, and we really tried to make this so that someone could just really